Design Talks this semester. Thank you, Selçuk hocam, for admitting people still coming in. Today we will have Yelta KÖM, who is also an old friend, an old partner, an architect and an academic, now currently based in Berlin, but also still has ties with Istanbul because he's originated from here. Now he's actually a lecturer in Berlin International University and also working as a researcher in the London Goldsmith University in a project called a Topographical Atlas?
Topological Atlas.
Topological Atlas, I'm sorry, I cannot really read my writing. It's like the end of the week. So, we will talk about many things, but I mean, we will basically talk about the works and the processes and the partnerships are related with a really important, I think, organization, a collective I can call, in Turkish is Herkes için Mimarlık, the international name would be Architecture for All. And we will talk about some of the projects they actually completed and accomplished, and also the ways in which architects or designers or in general design can approach to certain social issues and kind of serve for the greater good, or how they can be in contact with many partners in really or how they find the case, how they approach it. And what is the level of design or architecture or physical space takes part on these processes, and also some maybe other, strategies of communication, how they bring people together, because that's their kind of also magic. And I firsthand seen the experiments, and I've been actually, I when I was a student, I was a part of a group who was also the very core
You muted yourself, Ali.
Okay, I don't know how did it happen. And then so I was also part of the group, and now Yelta, welcome again. Thank you for coming here and also having us, because it's now internet, nobody's having anyone. So
yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Actually, it's a pleasure for me also. I mean, thank you very much all the students. I mean, today is Friday, end of the week. I know everyone is tired. I mean, I'm gonna start to share my screen, and I'm just gonna start my presentation right away.
And then so basically, I mean, after the presentation, we can have questions by, I think Cypher Hoca will be looking at the YouTube part. There might be some questions from there, but here it's part of our class. So anyone who has a question can either just type in the chat or open their mics and ask personally, and we can talk about it. Yeah, so we're gonna meet right after the lecture.
Great. And also thank you very much for the invitation. I mean, like Ali and Selçuk Hoca, I think we just met here. I'm gonna start talk about Herkes için Mimarlık. It's architecture for all in English. It's also, I need to mention, I mean, we are around 80-90 people, and whenever you listen to the story of Herkes için Mimarlık from someone else, from a different member, it's a different narrative. That's why, I mean, somehow all the presentations it's also unique. Depends on the presenter. Architecture for All is a non-profit organization founded in 2011, around 9 years ago. And we basically try to find solutions to social problems through design disciplines in urban and rural areas. And we want to contribute to the formation of an architecture field, and which works for and with society. And how we are doing it, we are trying to, trying to do this by encouraging participatory mechanisms that are lacking in the design, planning, and the construction process of the most of the projects. We are mostly architects, but we are also members from the other disciplines. And you know, I mean, we were just fresh graduates and young architects 9 years ago, and we were talking about participation and talking about how to make another type of architecture. I mean, how we can stretch the limits of the practice. Then we decided, okay, let's build a kind of a organization as a roof structure. Here you can see some of our members since 9 years. But also, as I mentioned before the lecture, there are some rules to the students' time. I hope this kind of examples also will be inspiring for you, I mean, for this class, because I was not part of it, but because I graduated from Yıldız Technical University, but we knew each other since a long time. I was part of another student organizations, but Ölçek 1/1 scale 1-to-1. At that time, it was a group of students in Istanbul Technical University, and they were trying to build and design and build projects in rural side of Turkey with their own sources and with their own skills and capabilities. And actually, Ölçek 1/1 scale 1-to-1 is one of the core entity of herkes için mimarlık. This is we should mention. We have to mention about it. One of the long-running projects of the association is called Revitalizing Abandoned Rural Schools. It started in 2012, and to create a potential gain out of rural schools which are abandoned for at least for 10 years because of the changing politics in the education system. What do I mean? In Turkey, there are different school systems in the past, and the government decided to bring the students from the small villages to the centers. That's why those village schools are going to be abandoned. Anyway, I mean, we started with this project with some examples, some surveys, some visits, and we started to learn a kind of a methodology. I mean, we started to explore a kind of a methodology because we were talking about how we should, make the projects more participatory, more accessible, how we do all together. And then we were questioning also, the architect's role and the social responsibility of architecture in design, and like issues such as testing the hegemony architecture accepted per professionality, or architecture looking at the other, at the one of the thresholds. And what we're going to learn, what we learned from that process, how to design together, how to build together. And of course, it's not a common practice methodology, working with NGOs, student groups, local communities, and individuals. But the aim of Architecture for All is established to provide a democratic and collaborative design process between architects, NGOs, decision makers, citizens, and engage with economic, political, and social dynamics of the place where it works. That's why I call it a kind of a decentralized methodology. Now I'm going to explain some other methodologies and projects. We are trying different methodologies in different places. One of the first methodology we are using, open calls for participation. Whenever we are doing a project, it can be in Ordu, in a small village of North Sea area of Turkey, or it could be somewhere in Izmir, or it could be in Taksim. We're always trying to make it first an open call and trying to run the process of the collective building by participation of the other people, and trying to include everyone in the process. And the other methodology is memory talks and building an archive and preparing, for example, local newspapers to inform. This is an example from Chaka. Chaka is a village next to the Black Sea. And when we were there, we found this building. It looks very nice. It looks like modernist architecture from 60s, 70s. But people are, it was a bit difficult to communicate with the community, and we decided, okay, let's talk with them and let's collect some archival inventory, and then we prepare a kind of local newspaper and informing the people, okay, here will be something and you should be part of it. We are trying to raise the awareness around the building through this method. One of the other methods we are using most of the time, design and build with children. It's a very nice learning process. We are using it especially for the school projects when we are working, with different school organizations to organize their landscape, to organize their playground areas. We're trying to get information with the children and giving them some tool sets to explore the design opportunities, design possibilities with them. We can call it, they're also a kind of a performative jobs, and also to explore the area with their perception. And of course, each time we couldn't manage to build the project, but we learned a lot from the process. And one of the most important thing we are thinking is discussion with public, design, discussion with public, and design with university students. Most of the time we are collaborating with other NGOs, and we are, whenever we found that there's a chance, we share our work in public with them, or we are trying to get some real feedback through the design process. And it's also help us, we are not going to become a kind of a visitor. We are trying to, involve with the community somehow. And also, maybe you are already questioning, because when you're working with this kind of projects, this resources is always a problem, the funding and where does the money coming from. We're also making open calls for community resources, just for the building materials, and trying to get sometimes, we need 16 windows, we need, this roof materials, or we need these materials to recycle and make it something else. Because nowadays also we are believing, the importance of self sustainability and self resources. That's why we are trying to expand our possibilities to look for different resource, to look for some different resources. Because if not, then we only get some. We always need to look for some grants, some institutional grants, or some corporate sponsorships. But this kind of community resources also allows the project allows to make the project more flexible and more democratic in a way. And when we are doing a project, we always living in the landscape. We live with the people, we live with the students, we live with all the collaborators. And one of the methods we are using, we just open a common table, open discussions. It's a kind of a communication methodology. And when people, they see a kind of open table, they will come, we will cook together, we will chat together. The table the table became a kind of a common platform for everyone. And sometimes, not only for the designing, but sometimes we are just making workshops like clean and repair temporary usage workshops. And in these workshops, we, as I said before, working with university students and working mainly with architecture students provides them with the opportunity of practicing the theory they were taught at school. And while the project is open anyone other than architecture students, it's intended a tool for students to improve their professional knowledge and expertise, as well as their social and cultural relations. This is also one of the other methodology. Not only the tables we are doing, we're also sometimes in some projects we are building ovens as tool for catering. And also we are learning from the field, like material research. It's we believe that this material research is very important, because as I said before, like self-sustainability, the common resources, we're also looking for the materials around the site and trying to use them in the projects. And for each project, we're creating collective blogs and zines, and we're sharing different stories and narratives from the participants. They're all open source, and you can find all of them in our issue account. They're kind of logs, like diaries from the projects. And each project has its own publication in a way. For example, I'm going to give an example from a project we did 2 years ago, more or less, at Chicago Architecture Biennial. We invited by the biennial, and the title was a biennial and the other stories. And at that time, it was luckily, I mean, we were working in the Bronzeville neighborhood, and there was a abandoned school again. I mean, but it's of course it's a different context than the rural side of Turkey. But the story is, I mean, they want to activate the surroundings of the abandoned school. There's one investor. He wants to transform the building to an incubator center, and the biennial invite us to make kind of intervention over there. And as outsiders, I mean, of course, we have some assumptions before about states. I mean, we did our own homework in that sense. But when you go to site and when you go to the field, it's always different than what you're expecting. And then we, created this interview methodology. Like we didn't create, but we used that method and trying to ask the people about food. What kind of food? I mean, we use food as a discussion opener, and we ask them what kind of food. What is the secret ingredient in their food? And then we face with the story of the soul food, where where the Black community used to create their own cuisine in the past, and nowadays they're having this. And the soul food is a kind of a binding. It's a binding component in the neighborhood. And when we find this common interest, we came with an idea. Okay, we are gonna make like huge picnic benches on the courtyard of the school, and we were planning. We also collaborated with other NGOs, other groups from Chicago, like Black Space Chicago, and they helped us. We built together there. We spent around 10 days, 2 weeks, to build the structure and start the first events. Here you can see from some pictures from the construction period. And when it's done, we organize a public gathering, a potluck gathering. People bring their own food, and we also provide food. And they share together, they share stories, and still people are using. We are still getting messages from Chicago, and it's still there. It's a very nice touch, and the people are still using the structure. But today, I'm gonna focus on the second part of the presentation, to the Taksim Gezi Park project. We worked like 8 years ago, so hardly. I'm just gonna make a short, brief history explanation. In December 2011, the Prime Minister and the Mayor of Istanbul announced the Taksim Square pedestrianization project to the public. And at the beginning, the only available source of the information about the project is a video that was distributed to the press. And of course, that causes many speculations about the specifics. And according to this video, Taksim Square, which is we all know as the heart of the city, will be entirely pedestrianized by the shifting vehicle traffic to underground tunnels. And in addition to that, Gezi Park, one of Istanbul's only green space, is slated to be destroyed to rebuild an Ottoman-era barracks, which stood there until its demolition in the 40s. And after Gezi Park project had been announced, multiple activist groups declared that green area stretching at the heart of the city couldn't be destroyed, the barracks couldn't be restructured, and that the project couldn't be accepted, of course. And thousands of signatures were collected, manifestation took place, academicians, experts, and artists who make up the Taksim platform launched the campaign, Taksim belongs to all of us, and the emphasis of all of us signified the breaking with the past. And this emphasis on all of us opened up for the new area in a narrative where everybody was used to employing the first person singular and plural. And in time, the support of the labor organizations and the professional associations that teamed up the Solidarity for Taksim opposition to the project gained force. But as architecture for all, I need to, boldly mention, of course, there's a huge movement of Gezi movement, but we also tried some small interventions during that time. I'm gonna talk about this. One of the first one is we did the open call. We just did the open call and did the workshop at Mimar Sinan University, and nearly 35 ideas came up in the workshop. These ideas converged in 2 main proposals afterwards. The first proposal is the public Gezi Park, traditional Gezi Park festivals. We did like imitations. I didn't share my sound, but that's okay. We invite artists and performers to the park and trying to show the people the park is still under use. I mean, this is not an abandoned park. People are using. I mean, we only want to show to everybody that the small changes, the park may be used in a more efficient way. It's a kind of placemaking project, a placemaking process. And actually, we try to bring different kinds of people together. We invite, as I said before, we invite musicians, we invite jugglers, we invite performers to the park, and just to raise the awareness about the future of the urban spaces. And I mean, as we all know, Gezi Park nowadays is a kind of a trademark for future of urban spaces. And from March to September, we organized around 10 festivals and around 1,000 people attended them. For example, this is a video from the first festival, just to show you, how does it look like at that time. And then the second idea is from the workshop, was an open call named, did anyone ask you? At this call, we were asking the questions such as, what does Taksim mean to you? What are you dreaming for Taksim? How can make this project be more participatory and transparent? We made a one-day workshop to support this call. And in this workshop, some architecture students produced collages about the topic. And we also collected works online. Here I'm going to show you some examples. I mean, of course, there are more like sarcastic approaches, to mocking the process a bit. But then we exhibited them in Gezi picnic festivals as well, in the public on the Gezi Park. We also made interviews about it, and we asked questions in the park to the people. I mean, how often are you coming to the Gezi Park? Where would you go if Gezi Park don't exist? Should park stay, or what it is, or should it change? I mean, there's no English subtitles for these videos, but you can check from the Vimeo channel. That's why I'm just going to skip it now. And we continued the production in September 2012 with some open source graphics, which shows the possible results of the pedestrianization project. We produced them because we were thinking that no one actually knows what will happen to Taksim and Gezi after the project, even us. And those were the predictions at that time. We shared these graphics online. They were open to be copied and edited and handed out. And yeah, then after we shared, people downloaded and printed and hanged them the newly began construction at the Taksim in September 2012. This was another work we had done again at that time. It's called Word. It's a tactical media project. We prepared this for the first Istanbul Design Biennial for the Musibet exhibition. Through the television, a newspaper, and the fax machine, we were receiving news from this other universe. We created a kind of other universe. It was the ideal universe where all the processes are different, and the other universe, all current conditions are handled through different perceptions, policies, strategies, and foresights. And focusing the highly, the controversial Taksim project, the installation tried to emphasize the unsustainability of the proposal of the administration. And we illustrated another reality composed of transparency, multi-actor collaboration, and participation, where we were able to explore alternatives of public action. It's a kind of a mockumentary. It's a fake project. It's a kind of a tactical media project, and we were able to monitor the relationship between freedom of speech and political driven construction of space. And the project blended existing process and alternative process, where the visitors are placed in the middle, creating their own debate space by asking which one is the real. And also we place a fax machine on the table, and when you tweet with the hashtag Taksim Senin, I mean, luckily it's the hashtag also of today. The tweets with the hashtag the fax machine will print it, and there's a kind of connection between the exhibition space and the author and the public. Their ideas could be visible in the exhibition space. And at least but not last, I mean, we opened also a petition around 2012 at Change.org, and they will not the message that we are not against the project for Taksim. Instead, we want a better project with participatory processes, and the signature number is, it was 7,000 at that time, but after the Gezi resistance started, it passed over 50,000. And then in 2013, when Gezi resistance happened, right after people entered the Gezi during the protests, we also part of, people are building their own speech corners. We also built one of this where people could say their word, and the ability of express each one's word had been the main subject of our work since the beginning of the process. We recorded also this speech and published them in our YouTube channel as others. It's also part of in our YouTube channel. And at the same time, we publish our archive of the news about Gezi Park online in Turkish, English, and different languages. Actually, for the project at Istanbul Design Biennial, we decided, as I told you before, one of our methodology building an archive, we looked at all the news about Gezi Park and the Taksim Square, and we collected them in an archival way. But while Gezi resistance started, we were like, okay, let's publish them in digital, because we have the information, and we created. It's a very touchful moment, because we shared the information, and it's translated in English, French, and German by volunteers in a couple of days. And at least then we will open the website. This is what's happening in Taksim. At least people could have a kind of information what happened in the past around the square. But on the other hand, as an architecture group, we said we need new definitions for architecture, and in kind of situations when architecture is removed from the architects. I remember, when we were, during the Gezi, one day we got a call, and they were asking to us, we want to build a library. Would you like to, just, a bit help, or how we can do it together? And we were looking at the screen, and we were like, okay, it's done. People have built their own structure already. And then we thought about it, and each unique structure that we encountered in the streets and the Gezi Park had its own design and implementation process. And what we can do documentation, because documentation of these temporary structures seem to us important for further examinations, and considering, and also if you consider their limited life cycle, it's very important to document them in an architectural way. We also made an open call for these drawings, and we took photos of the structures, we shared with them, and with all the volunteers, we draw from different views. As we call the kind of resistance architecture, or architecture without architects, it's displayed the kind of potentials that become available, and the sort of the results that can provide when the field is removed from professional realm. And it's such period of this kind of crisis, the potential actions of architects becomes a critical question. And at that time, when everything comes together by itself, architecture can return to its intellectual sphere and set forth in his or her professional expertise and skills. This is not an outcome of planned process, this resistance architecture. It's how the process raises up, and creating space as a professional act may prove to be problematic. In this case, there are no individuals present inside. And I mean, we all, I mean, as architects or as professionals, we always define architecture with architects, but especially I think also, I mean, Gezi Park was an atmosphere where all paradigms that were used to has shifted to something else. We don't know what is the new definition. I mean, perhaps there will be many more definitions. We were seeking for a new one, maybe, but we know that the new definition will be shaped by people, not only architects. It was a nice, I mean, moment to understand this approach. And also, on the other hand, creating a collective memory was really, I mean, important when the government or when the power structures is trying to forget everything. I mean, the life cycle of these structures were really short, so we had to document them. And we believe it's also a way of a kind of resistance. We keep remembering what happened there, and in a way, we merge the practice and the protest by using architecture as a tool to critique. I mean, it's the last slide of my presentation, but I'm sure we will have much more longer discussion. I mean, you can check our work in our website, architecturemimark.org, or you can follow or check our social media accounts. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the questions.
I actually do have a question. Can I ask?
Sure.
I'm an industrial design student. It's my first year, and these types of things are the things that interest me the most. Designing for the community and such actions. And I would like to take part in these projects, part in these events.
Actually, you are welcome, but I mean, because of the COVID-19, as we all know, I mean, it's this year it was a bit, difficult for us to practice on the field. But sometimes we are doing like digital workshops. If you want to get involved, I mean, I'm gonna write an email address here. You can just send an email, and we will add you, the mailing list, and you will get the information whenever there's a call. Whenever there's an open call to participate at the workshop.
Is there a place I can learn more about this workshop?
I mean, it always depends on the projects. Like, I mean, this is, for now, we don't have any upcoming projects, as I know. But when you're going to be in touch, we will let you know. But thank you for the interest.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. Because no student is asking a question, I'm asking a student. I'm also a lifelong student. I have actually two questions. The first one, we are now in the design course, and as an engineer, which is not very apart from design, I'm learning quite a lot from design thinking. How do you see the design thinking approach in your personal life? What would you comment to our freshman students? Thanks.
Wow, I mean, first I thought it's an easy question, but now I think about it, it's not easy to answer. I think design thinking, I mean, not the term of the design thinking, but I can paraphrase thinking through design. Allows me and the practice of architecture mimarlık to think more about possibilities and to think more how we can use different tools and skills to solve the problem and looking for different perspectives and aspects. I mean, I don't want to underestimate the engineering process, but I feel
Yelta, you are in the dark?
Yes, a bit. But just I can open the light. Just much better. Yeah. I didn't realize it.
I'm really sorry because I'm also in another review. I'm just trying to balance the mics, and because I got my ear on you taking notes for you, and also like looking at another project at a review. It's just Selçuk hocam, I think we had one question, right?
Yeah, I was replying Selçuk hoca's question actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just because you were with. I'm sorry. Just
yeah. Okay, what I was saying. Yeah, I mean, I think the design, brings a kind of looking for different approaches and trying to, and also working with the people, especially in architecture for all practice. What I learned, I could say honestly from there, what I learned, the good and participatory design takes really time. There is no place for rush. It's really difficult to learn in this, in today's environment. But sometimes, what I learned, sometimes we should be patient, because design and good work, let's say, good practices, we cannot reach through the fast processes. This is really what I learned from the long-term design processes. Okay, Sarper hocam also information. And also, I didn't mention about it, but maybe you all know. Sarper hocam, he was also part of most of the projects I shared with you.
okay. Any other questions, people? I see some guests from other schools and other communities. That's nice.
Maybe I can trigger some of the students. Please, our dear students, just think about the difficulties in the design course, and maybe you can ask Yelta about it. Anyone who has a difficulty and want to hear something from him?
Probably they will, because I was also taking notes. I know the group, like they're like most of the members are my close friends and also colleagues from different organizations and different teams. But I think what also again somehow, what affects me in or what encourages me, that like the overall sensibility to all the issues, but more than that, like finding the right ways and mediums and processes to approach them, because these are all like complex problems. For example, in the case of Taksim, or the information, or just reaching out to people to care about some small school and its space in the middle of, I don't want to say nowhere, but in a really remote location. But I was just taking notes, and kind of designing the process is also a kind of an important part. Like, okay, we need attention. How are we gonna get it? What are the ways to get attention? Is it publication? It is literally bringing people together. If so, what sort of event? Is it like a dinner? Is it like a breakfast? Is it like a public lecture? Or is it just like an informal gathering, etc., etc.? So these are like, I think, goes into the design thinking. I think there's a lesson here that we should all think about. And you see that, the collective is being in contact with, many types of people with many different backgrounds, many different ages, and physical conditions, from like little children to people who donate, official people, with the local officials, talking with the general public, talking with the professional architects, etc., etc., or just some guy who wants to donate some money or some material but don't know how to do so. Just let's say a founder of a material company, etc. So you can see also the flexibility of their ways of communicating. I think this is quite important to decide, and the tools and the mediums of making these connections and designing the process And we see like I think they're one powerful quality is the way that they can do this, like the making of an event, the designing of an event, like, because we've seen some open calls and we've seen workshops, lectures, or like tables, literal tables, built and where people can sit around and just exchange. They do interviews, so it's important to find the suitable format for, you have an aim, you have a plan. I think that's important, but like taking the steps and defining them and finding the proper and suitable formats, I think it's quite important. And they, as a kind of a really important and contemporary notion, they kind of work and encourage the open source as a really main, how do you say, like a cornerstone, but also as like a mentality, like, for example, in those graphics and drawings, you did like a call and it became an open source thing. It's like it became anonymous, so it became for everyone, where everybody can contribute, and they also share information. They actually ask people to contribute and become a part of it. So there's also like a different relationship with what we call the authorship, having a designer behind everything, one district designer, but we can just design all together. You can be a part of this process. And maybe from a more practical point of view, which Selçuk Hoca might also be interested, even in their flyers, they really define what's missing, giving numbers and making things physical and tangible. I think that's important. They said, okay, we need 15 volunteers, or we need we need certain materials, such as like we need 8 doors. I mean, just 10 tables. We need, I don't know, like 5 gallons of, paint, blue paint, etc. And I think this is also important, like just stating your needs or your requirements really clearly and effectively, also in a graphical format. I think this is also makes sense, because so people can actually know how to contribute. It doesn't look vogue, but it looks really real and really like simple and practical, so people can actually really become part of it. I mean, these are my notes from your presentation. I just want to maybe people can contribute also. These are like important points for our students to consider. Nadine, maybe you can elaborate.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just gonna add one sentence. I mean,
sure. Yeah. I felt like I talked too much.
No, I think the power of the collective is like, the celebration, the non-homogeneous encounters. This is the power of the collective, and it brings us, the serendipities, what we are not expecting with this, when we're meeting with people, different. It's the important part. And Nadine has a question. Sorry, Nadine, please.
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you so much, Ali Hojam, for what you just said. I have a question related to a specific point, which is different occasions and different issues. They require coming up with appropriate ideas. And I'm not a design student myself. I'm just taking it for the core course. So it's a new course for me. So I find it the hardest part to come up with an appropriate idea to what you're being asked to do. Like how is the creative process? How does it work? How do you find what suits the situation perfectly? And thank you so much. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. Actually, it's the most difficult part. Thank you for asking this question. Because the creative processes are always difficult. If you work, as the solo architect, it's different. But if you try to work with, 30, 40 minds, it's much more different than everything. But during the time, of course, we are learning. It's a learning process as well. That's why when you know your peers, when you know your colleagues, when you know your friends around you are working with, it brings a kind of a comfortable zone. But as I said before to Selçuk Hoca, it's very slow and it takes longer. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because I mean, personally, what I think, it's always better to make the thing slower and slower to reach the, more accessible, not as accessible, but more proper way. But the creative process also sometimes the time pressures also works. I mean, it's, of course, we are trying to, expand, we are trying to stretch all the processes. But for example, I showed the project in Chicago. It's an exhibition. You should come up with the idea in a point. It's not, you cannot stretch everything, all the processes forever. But then, in that cases, we are using for, experiences. And then it's also kind of a mutual trust, someone, it's the main body of being a collective. You should trust each other. You should trust your peers. You should trust your colleagues. Then you are gonna be okay. That's gonna be, maybe not the best one, but okay, you're gonna say yourself, okay, I did this for this time. It's the best outcome in this time period. But for the next one, I'm gonna learn much more, and I'm gonna collaborate with much more people, and the result will be much better. This is a kind of a learning process. I think the important thing is to keep this mindset during practicing. I hope it will. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Hala.
Yeah. Okay. So hi, thank you for your presentation first. It was really interesting. But so I'm a mechatronics engineer, and I always thought about this thing specifically that while designing, I have a difficulty coming up with something new, because I feel like everything has already been created. Like most of the problems we face, something has already been created to help. So I feel like I'm not really gonna contribute a lot to making something new. So I don't know, do you have any advice about that, maybe?
Okay, I heard a little bit, but I think I got the question. Not only related to architecture for all, but it reminds me one of the first art and architecture historian, John Winkelmann. He was mentioning about taste. Can we learn taste, or taste can be learned and taught? And he was also mentioning about imitation. As you said, you can feel that everything is done. You cannot design anything new. But imitation is a kind of a methodology, that's for all the creatives. We are looking for different sources. Of course, but there is, I think maybe Ali Hoca can also, contribute on this, but what I believe, there is no original. Whatever you do from yourself, you interpret it somehow, and it's your original. That's why it's, I think the real motivation is to create new one. you should inspire yourself from the different one. You shouldn't think like, as everything is done, but you should, encourage yourself. If there is a new or sort of good and nice examples, what do you like? There is a way of doing, reaching your ideas also. You can learn from that. This is what I think. Actually, this is, if I understood the question very well. This is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Everything is usually either an interpretation or like a mix of everything else. Like this, there are like many thinkers says that everything is a remix, and you can look it up. It's also used in design fields and advertisement fields also, but it might apply to anything. Just think about the first house is like kind of the structures we use now was sort of like an inspiration, or you can say a copy from natural forms, like let's say trees, etc. Everything starts with it either starts from the nature, and you can actually, if you look at the history of design, like mimicking certain design and art forms all start with just copying and mimicking like nature. Sounds, etc. So it all starts with that. So there's nothing really original in that sense, but maybe you can look for original processes, I would say. I think that's what also Yelta was saying. Like the things you surround yourself with, the things you watch, the things you consume, the place you work can be original or beneficial for you. So don't think about the outcome, but think about the processes and the tools and the places you kind of approach to that outcome. That's like a kind of a basic advice we can give.
Thank you both. Yeah, yeah. I understood. Thank you.
Yeah, it's about also time. Like it takes time to. I mean, I think in response to also to the previous question, you know,
Yeah,
creativity is also about like trying and learning. Like what what design and any creative process tells us, there's no one correct way, and it's really unlikely that you will get to it at the first try. I mean, they also, like Herkes Mimarlık also learned different ways, and they failed like any other person, any other group. But like from their experience, they got some, you know, ideas, they got some feedbacks, and they come up with like better, let's say, models or tools or ways of communication. And then they started to basically put those experiences together. So this is also, that's why we call it design is a process, but not just for the product, let's say, not just for this, but also of yourself. So you basically develop and change along the way. So one should accept this. I mean, you can fail, and you're gonna fail and fail, but then that's how the good stuff comes up.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you both.
Sure. Okay. We have a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like not just the spirit of the place, but the spirit of the condition. You know, spirit of the problem, like what is happening and how we approach it. So, and I just like looking at all the work over the years. I just also like one other advice to the students in a more real sense, but also in terms of the, you know, contents of this course. You know, you can see they work. You can work in different scales and to different extents. Meaning that I think it's also important to define what you can achieve in terms of scale duration, but you can be a part of the change, or you can be the one segment of the effect you want to create. It's not like just solving one big problem at once, but I think it's important for you also in your design projects to define what is it that you want to achieve and how much you can actually do it. So defining a, you know, like a viable and, you know, attainable goal is also important to kind of adjust your like energy and mind to it. Otherwise, you can basically get lost in a really big problem that you cannot really solve in like a couple of weeks, for example. But you can define some like an attainable segment. Let's say, okay, I'm going to make, you know, let's say 30 people aware of this thing. So, okay, and this is something you can actually work on. Then you can start thinking about the strategies and the models to just make awareness. Are you going to bring them together? If so, how, etc., etc. So I think this is also some advice I can just think about when it comes to, you know, this affecting change and doing some good or being part of change. I think this is defining something you can actually do is also important, given the time scope and your abilities or your limitations. It's good to know your limitations also. Okay, any other comment or question? Okay, so it's already like 6:30. I mean, Yelta, thank you very much again for the presentation. Do you have a YouTube channel? That's the question.
Yes, we have.
You can look it up, right? Like it's Mimarlık, right?
I think it's Herkes için Haber Ajansı. It's the news agency for.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I approach it just. It's
okay.
nice. It's nice. Yeah, I can show it. Yeah, there's like a different version. So Yelta hocam, thank you for, you know, coming and just telling the stories. I also like haven't seen some of them for a while and kind of updating us on the whereabouts of Herkes Mimarlık, but also on a more practical and theoretical level as well. And thank you for the lecture and your answers.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. I'm again sorry for just this coincidence with another review. I really couldn't really part. I mean, I know the projects. I seen some of it took notes, but hopefully I will be able to also contribute to the whole flow of the event. And I believe our students were also happy to meet you and just talk about design and this kind of social stuff in a more general sense. Selçuk Hocam?
You are always more than welcome. We will be happy to have some professionals and also some activists like you to talk to our students and also to us. It was a valuable experience for me, and I hope for all of our attendants. Okay, so thank you again.
Okay. And people, you can see the change is possible and real. You can do it. You just need to, plan well and work in, teams, right? So
I hope it was
like an encouragement for you.
Yeah, I hope it was inspiring for all of you, because as I told you during the presentation, we started when we were students.
Yes, second or third year. Was it?
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
second or third year.
But then it became
long time ago.
Yeah, but it became something bigger. Working in different continents now, like members from different continents, events in different continents, etc. It just usually starts in a small space, like a classroom or studio, and then that's how things start. So just keep that in mind, and you don't really have to be. And again, to invoke change, you don't really have to have a design major per se, but the way you approach things is more important than the official education you have. So just keep that in mind. So thank you, and we will actually have another guest lecture next week. I will just again post it online, and you will have the information at Learn. It's going to be also on Friday, and we will keep this coming from different professionals from the field. So see you also soon and next week. Selçuk Hocam görüşürüz. Sarper Hocam teşekkür ederiz moderasyon için, teknik şey için.
Görüşürüz.
Yelta sana tekrar çok teşekkürler. Yakın zamanda gene görüşmek üzere.
Bye bye.
Hoşça